For the tickets after the talk tonight, find Hannah Carter and Aaron Black. Where are they? So you contact them to buy tickets. So we will also be selling tickets throughout the weekend masses and in front of the office during business hours next week at the chapel. Tickets are $20 cash only, and we'll give you $10 back when you pick up your ticket. Pick up the tickets from the chapel next Friday from 4:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. And transportation is on your own, so figure out a full ride before you buy your tickets. New Student Night is Saturday, September 8th at 6 p.m. It's free Chinese food, mocktails, and you get to learn more about the chapel and meet new students, and a bonfire. This event is for new students only, so if you're a freshman, if you're a transfer, if you're new here, that event is for you. Interested in learning about the Catholic faith? Hello, can I get everyone's attention real quick? One last announcement. If you're interested in learning more about the Catholic faith, talk to Kristen Judah. Where is Kristen Judah? Right there. If you want to learn more about Catholicism, or if you'd like to be baptized, receive communion, or be confirmed, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speaker. You all know him. It's Father James.
How's everybody? How's the food? Hey, let's give a round of applause for all of our 11 a.m. choir members who made this food for us. So awesome. Thank you so much. This was great. Wow, every week we do this. It's so great to be able to have all of you here, and this is the first time that we have these really, we used to have round tables, and we can fit like double the number of people in here now, so it's great to see you guys. For those of you I have not met yet, my name is Father James Searby. Some people call me Father James, some people call me Father Searby. I am a priest, so it's nice to meet you. I told some of the staff this the other day, I had a neat experience at Giant the other day. You never know who you're going to run into. But I was walking through, and there was a student, I'm assuming she was a student. She walked by me, and she was like, "Ooh, I like your square." I'm like, "Thanks." It's my new fashion statement. I know. So, that was, I'm like, okay, that's good. Does anyone else know what I am? No. So before I became a priest, so there's a story I want to tell you tonight, and I think some of the older students might have heard it, but just laugh and be quiet. Before I was a priest, I worked for the circus. I was the director of sales and marketing for Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus out of Manhattan. And so I worked for the big show. I worked for Disney on Ice, which is coming here as well. So I got to work for Ringling and Disney. And my job was to basically make sure that everybody knew about the show. But I also had a lot of great experiences. Life is an adventure, and I said, you know what, I'm not going to just work in an office. I'm going to go take advantage of this as much as I possibly can, because I knew I was not doing this for the rest of my life, mainly because I worked like 7 days a week and never slept. And I said, I'm going to try to immerse myself as much as I can. And they actually started a program in the circus, and I was the first one to do it, where we lived on the train and actually got to perform and be with all the performers in different capacities so that we could sell the show better. Like, you can't sell it just by reading, you got to be part of it. So I got to be a clown at a show, I worked with all the different, with the dancers, that was fun. I got to be with the band, I got to live on the train next to the clown car, and which was out of control. And one of the great things that I got to do was work with the animal trainers. And so, as part of my job, I would do the big animal walk in New York. So we would walk 18 elephants down 34th Street in the middle of the night. All the news networks and all the thousands and thousands of people would come out, because we would broadcast it like a few hours before we did it. And people would literally wake up 1, 2 in the morning, or it's New York, or like never went to bed, ever. And it's literally the city that never sleeps. And they would just look out their windows, and all these elephants would walk by. It was awesome. So I got to know the animals. I got to know the elephants. I got to know the different lion trainers and stuff. And one day I was out on the train. We were in Texas, going somewhere in mid-Texas, a very desert type area. And the lion trainer he knocked on my door. He was this Australian guy, and he had this big scar on his face, which was awesome. Like, where'd you get that? And he's like, yeah, James, would you like to feed the lions? And I'm like, yes. Feeding lions? I was like getting ready to call my mom and tell this story. And he's like, all right, so here we go. Put this on. And he hands me this harness. And I'm like, why do I need a harness? Well, yeah, you got to feed the lions on the outside of the train. And I'm like, the train's moving. Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh yeah. It's like all of a sudden, like the Indiana Jones theme song starts running through my head. I'm like, yes, I'm gonna hang from a train, feeding lions. So I get out, and he hands me. There's hooks on the back of this harness where he hung meat. So I have meat hanging off my butt, and I'm hanging on the train like this. There's a thing, and I'm leaning on the train, like against it like this, and I hook my harness in up here. So he's like, yeah, you just go along the side, and there's a latch right here. You just kick the latch, and the cage will come up, and you just slip in the meat, and go to the next one. And I'm like, well, what's in between the lion and me when I kick that cage? Nothing. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this. Because I figure, if I die, what cooler story would that be? Right? I'd get up to heaven and God would just be like, yeah, come on. So I'm there, and I'm going along, and I feed one, and I'm going along to the next one, and then my feet, I'm wearing shoes like this, okay, so like dress shoes, which, this is not an optimal fashion apparel to wear when you're hanging on a train. And I'm on the thing, and all of a sudden, my foot slips, and I fall, and I'm face to face with the lion. Nothing protecting us in between. He calls out to me right before this happened. He goes, hey, remember, they're trained. They're not tame. And I'm like, no, I did not have any wisdom then, so I had no idea what he was talking about. I figured it out later, which is what I'm going to talk about tonight. But as I was going along, now I don't know if you've ever been face to face with an actual lion before. Oh, but this was a lioness. Okay. Lions, your average maned lion, weighs about 500 pounds. A lioness, about 650. The female lion is the actual hunter. The men just kind of like sit around. They'll protect them and things like that. So like the big lion mane in the roar, he mates. That's what he does, right? But the female lion is like the one that chases the prey and bites it and kills it, okay? So she and I are looking at each other. We're having a moment. And I'm looking at her. Her eye is like really big and eyes. And she's just looking at me, and I feel her breath on my face. Now, I'm allergic to cats. So the first thing is my face just going, you know, like crap. But she's breathing on me, and I feel this, and I'm thinking, she's trained. She's not tame. In other words, she's still wild. And when she looked at me, you could see the wild cat still in her eyes. Now that moved me very. I was able to like pull myself up on the harness and slowly put down the cage, and she's just like, I handed her the meat, and she's like ripping flesh and sinew off this bone, and I'm like, that could have been me. So I remembered that, and then I had another experience. At this point now, I'm back at Madison Square Garden in New York, and my office was right, so outside of my office, I had the cages for the big cats. Sometimes we had tigers, sometimes we had lions. This one, again, was lions. And I remember seeing the male lion with his big mane, and when he roared, you could hear him outside. That's very cool. I don't know if you can hear a lion a mile away. And so I'd be walking into work, and I can't do this now, and I'd just be like, oh crap, that's awesome. I get to work here. But I noticed he had a big roar, but this lion was different. He was kind of tame. He just sat there, passively, and he looked, to me, depressed. Now, I'm not an animal psychologist. I can't tell the actual depression level of a lion. But as I was, every day I'd walk by him, and once in a while, you'd give him something like, don't feed the cats. I'm like, whatever. So, want some ham or whatever. But as I looked at him, his eyes looked sad. He didn't look wild and ready to go like the lioness. He had something taken away from him. He became passive. He was a passive kitty. He was no longer the tough lion. Now, when he went out for the show and stuff, he looked kind of tough, but he wasn't. His wildness had started to be taken away. And I started thinking about that. And that's something that, that experience years ago, I tell that story a lot because that experience really moved me. That often the world kind of tries to tame us rather than train us. And what happens is that we can become passive receivers. And this is something that happens. Have you ever noticed, we see it all the time. You've probably this week been walking around campus and noticed that, hopefully you're not one of them, but people can be buried in their phone. Oh, I got a text. No, some people can be buried in their phone to the point, last year was the most awesome thing. This dude was clearly watching a show, and he didn't have the wireless ear, he had the wire in, and he's watching a show, and he ran right into a tree. It was awesome. I'm watching, I'm like, tree, he couldn't hear me, tree, bam! And when he hit, it was like, and he just went like this. Like, seriously? I couldn't look away from the phone. But what was happening, I noticed, is that when we do that, when we fall into that, we become passive receivers. TV, all those different things. We just receive what's ever given to us, and we kind of wait to be given something, rather than being active receivers or active participants in life, where we're taking life and really living it, really living the adventure and thriving in it. And active living and then active receiving requires a mind and a heart that ponders, that deliberately thinks about life. Tonight I want to give you something practical to begin the semester with. To be able to ponder living so that we can actually get the most out of our college experience. People talk a lot about the college experience. I want to go away, I want to have the college experience, I want to live on campus, I want the college experience, all these different things. But no one ever really defines that. What is the college experience? So I want to talk a little about that tonight, to really grab it, because I want you to not be like so many other people. Believe me, before I was here as the chaplain, I was at Clarendon at St. Charles Borromeo Catholic Church, right there in the middle of Clarendon. And it's just young adults. There's tons of young adults everywhere. You guys probably know if you don't know, the Arlington area, right down to the river, it's just people in their 20s and early 30s. And it's bars and gyms and apartment complexes and a couple of offices and more bars and more gyms. And more yoga studios than I could count. And it's just I'm always walking, why these people? I'm like, ow, it hurts just watching that. And but it's a great area, it's a neat area. But this is something that I constantly heard from young adults. After school, they would say, I kind of squandered my college experience. Or I wish I could have gotten more out of college. And so I heard that so often, I started thinking, what is the college experience? And interestingly enough, then I'm sent to be a college chaplain. But what does it mean to have that real experience? And to really ponder it, and to intentionally, or I would say deliberately, live that experience. There's a great quote, one of my favorite quotes by Henry David Thoreau, is one of my favorite American authors. And you've probably heard this before. I want you to listen to it. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. I did not wish to live what was not life. Living is so dear. Nor did I wish to practice resignation, unless it was quite necessary. I wanted to live deep, and suck out all the marrow of life, to live so sturdily and Spartan-like as to put to rout all that was not life, to cut a broad swath and shave close, to drive life into a corner and reduce it to its lowest or simplest terms. In other words, Thoreau, one of the great American authors, goes to the woods and he says, I want to live simply and really just take in the true importance of life, the real meaning of life. I want to get to the truth, and I want to become better for it. That is college. St. John Paul II said, all men and women are entrusted with the tasks of crafting their own life. A certain sense, they are to make their life a work of art, a masterpiece. I think what can often happen is that in being passive in life, we wait for opportunities to come to us. We wait for, whether it's the school or our families or particular job, all these different things, to offer a possibility to me, offer a potential, offer an adventure, and then I'll take it. And what St. John Paul is saying is, no, we've got to do the opposite. We've got to go looking for it. We've got to go take hold of it. We are the ones responsible for making our life into a masterpiece, into a work of art. And that's what makes life so beautiful. When I actively run out, when I leave myself, when I leave my comfort, which all of you have done in coming to school, but what happens is it can quickly become comfortable. I bet after a week of school, new students have already semi-acclimated. Gotten used to it, meeting some people, gotten used to your room, hopefully your room's been set up. You know where to eat, right? You know where the bathroom is. The basics, right? Maybe met a couple of friends, and it's easy to kind of settle back into that. And then classes, register for classes. So we already have the classes that are that we've signed up for. And so our learning can easily become limited. We can just fall into the groove and once again be passively receiving. And what St. John Paul the Great and even Henry David Thoreau says is, no, we've got to go out of ourselves, out of this experience, simplify life to a point where we can actually live. In other words, we're not bogged down by things, and then find what's truly important. Because that's going to be the core of life. You see, each one of you and me are uniquely made by God to image God in a way no one else does. And that always fascinates me. It's something that really moves me, is that every single person, I love being in New York. I love New York. I love going to Manhattan. People say, why do you love it? It's crazy. The city's nuts. It's loud. I said, because it's the feast of human drama laid out in front of you. There's millions of people there. And every single person you meet is an image of God in a way that no other person ever in the history of mankind and ever will be is. Which means that every experience we have uniquely mediates God in some way. Every person we meet uniquely shows God in some way. But that also means that you and I uniquely show God in some way. And so if I want to not only come to know God, but also come to know myself so that I can live a full life, and hopefully a life that's of service to other people, because this is what ultimately makes us happy, I have to actually know, what is it that I desire? Like, what do you want individually? Not what have people told you want. Right? Because in passive receiving, we're either told we want things by media, by advertisers, all these things, or we're even told by our own parents or families or situations we grew up in, this is what you want. Like, you're good at this thing, so you should be whatever. You should be a salesman, you should be an engineer, you should be a government contractor, you should be... And what happens is we often go, oh, okay, because they know better. And so what happens is that we follow that course. And you'll very often find people later said, yeah, I chose the wrong major. Or, I kind of followed a career track that was... They become boring. Have you ever met boring people? Yeah. Yeah, right. And so kind of the suburban mediocre. I mean, there's mediocre people in the city and the country too, but I think especially in the suburbs, like a lot of muggles everywhere, and it's just, and you know, it's just like kind of boring people who have been defeated by life. Because what happens is that they've just allowed life to come to them. They've taken whatever it gave, and they didn't go out and really live or get to know themselves. And I want you to have that rich college experience where you come to really know what are your hopes, your dreams, your desires, because they're actually going to introduce you in a more profound way to God, to yourself, and to others. And that's going to be the source of a lot of happiness. So that we don't become tame, but rather we spend these next years, be they 4 or 5 years for the new people, or people who maybe are seniors and super seniors and getting ready to graduate after this year, maybe, right? Is like to be able to get there and to say, I don't regret my last 4 years. I actually, 5 years, whatever, I actually have been trained to live my life so that I can learn the truth of myself. Because there's 3 kinds of people. There's the kind of person who makes things happen. There's the kind of person who watches things happen. And there's the kind of person who says, what happened? But if you start to learn the truth of yourself, and understand how you've been made uniquely and celebrate it, you'll start to understand the truth of God. And then you'll start to be curious about the person in front of you, wherever that is. Here, at your dorm, in your families, whatever it is. And it sets up time where college becomes, this is the opportunity for me to become, in effect, the best version of myself so that I can be at service. It gives me something to wake up for. Life becomes the great adventure. Rather than being like that lion that sat in the cage depressed and sad because he no longer had opportunity, you can be like the one who's still got some wildness in the eyes, still got some heart, even when life is sad, even when life is difficult, but there's heart to it, and that makes you a free person. A free person who's not enslaved to the things of this world, but rather open to the bright possibility of anything that would come to them. And so I actually have something to give you that's going to help you do this. And actually it'll help you whether you are talking to a friend in depth, like having deeper friendships, because it gives you something to talk about in the depth. Maybe it's in discipleship with our focused missionaries or with our Bible study leaders. Maybe it's with me in spiritual direction. These are some questions to ponder that'll get you ready to live life to the fullest. So I'm going to pass these out, or I'm not. Who wants to help? You guys want to help? All right. These are great. Front and back. All right, you want to bring that to the back? Thanks.
We need more.
If you have more back there, can you bring them up here? There's some people who didn't go. And if we need to print more, we can. Did everyone get one? If you haven't gotten one, raise your hand. Raise it high. Raise it high. C needs one? All right. All right, so let's listen up. I just want to explain this to you, and then you can take this. This is for you. This is for you. So Labor Day is coming up. We have a long weekend, which I always think is kind of hilarious that we have a vacation after a couple of days of school. And some of you are going to go home, and some of you are just going to chill out here, which is great. By the way, campus is really great. on these kinds of breaks. Like if you don't feel like going back to drama or whatever it is that you have at home, is sometimes it's nice to go back. But it's really great to just kind of settle in more and not have too many responsibilities, catch up on your work, and just chill. But this would be a great thing to bring to pondering, bring to prayer, bring to just thinking. It's also a great thing you can share with your friends who maybe they don't pray. Maybe there's a lot of people here who aren't Catholic. You don't have to be Catholic to do this, right? This is for everybody, okay? But kind of sitting and saying, how do I deliberately live my college experience so that I can have some goals? Like, what kind of person do you want to be 4 or 5 years from now? Where do you see yourself? And I don't mean necessarily like a career. Your major and career thoughts and things may change. There's really no such thing as a career. Okay, if anyone tells you it's like, you're going to have this career. No, you're going to have a series of jobs that may be in a similar industry. But this idea of a career, really like baseball players have careers, okay? And because it lasts a long time, and maybe movie actors, like 50 of them, right? You ever notice every movie has the same 50 actors? Like, stop it! And no matter how old they get, they're still jumping up buildings. And it's like, you would be, I don't know, dead. But think about these categories. The spiritual life, the academic life, your professional life, your relations, and also your physical life, like just in general. I don't mean just like fitness, but health and all these things. What goals will you have? And then obviously it's all laid out there, but like